Hello and welcome to another Blender tutorial. Today we're going to learn how to create the cereal and a bowl effect. We're not going to focus on the texturing and modeling of this Cheerio, but more of the particle system and how they react with the physics and this bowl. So this could be a little bit longer tutorial, so let's go ahead and get started. Open up Blender and exit the splash screen. I'm going to turn on screencast keys so you can see in the bottom left corner what buttons I pushed. I could just close that out. So I'm going to delete this, and we're going to first create the bowl. And so this is what we are going to trying to achieve. So we're going to start with the bowl, and then there's actually two particle systems. One that puts a whole bunch of Cheerios down first, and then a second one that creates more of the splash. So let's go make the bowl. First, we're going to hit Shift A, add mesh, not mesh, we're going to add a curve, Bezier, and if you hit 3 and hit R for rotate 90 degrees, that puts it so you can make the bowl using the front view. By just hitting number 1, you can go to the front view, hit Tab, and then hit A to make sure everything's selected, and then position this so you can right click to select these more like just a mesh, and then hit Shift S and do selection to cursor, and that now creates the starting point to the cursor, and the cursor is in the very center of all of this, so it'll work out good. Let's go back to numpad 1, which is front view, and we'll just grab this one, move it up, and rotate it. If you want to, you can grab each one of these points like this. You can grab this one too, but I think we're doing okay. And then because a bowl is not just flat, we also want to make this three-dimensional, so we're going to hit E for extrude, and you can see how it kind of creates this S. We're going to have to rotate it all the way around so it creates a fluid motion, and we're going to just position this, actually hit Shift S and do selection to cursor again, and that'll put it right to that, but we're going to create some depth. Instead of just bringing that there, we're going to bring it up a little bit and decrease. Actually, well, let's click this point, Shift, click this point, hit the W, and it'll create a subdivide. We're going to bring this down here and play with some points to get it exactly how you'd like it. I don't think that'll look too bad, so we're going to stick with this. If you want to change some things, you can do that next once you think you have the bowl. And remember, this is all editable even after this for a minute, and I'll tell you when it's not so that you can make sure you got all your finishing touches done. But go to your modifiers, hit add modifier, and click screw. We don't want the Z-axis, as you can tell. That's not what we want. I think it's the Y-axis. Yes, it's a Y-axis for me. If the Z-axis is what you are, say you modeled it this direction, different things will apply. So if you modeled it from this direction, say your bowl went like this, it'd be a different axis, but mine's a Y-axis. And so, yeah. If you change the steps, it'll make it more smooth, but we're going to add a subdivide, so you can keep that halfway. Probably 10 would be okay. If you wanted to yeah. So, you can do some different. I don't think this will really do anything until you hit F12, and it'll change some stuff like that. But the rest of it should be fine. You can do any finishing touches on this right now. You can hit the 5 button to make it look flat. It's not actually flat, as you can tell, but make it look a little bit flatter. We have a nice little ridge going along the top. I don't think it looks half bad. let's see, I think you can, yeah, we can take this down a little bit. Actually, I almost like that better. So I'm gonna leave it like that. Yeah. Okay, so now that we have our bowl, if you go into the physics tab, you can see there's not very many physics options, and the one that we need is a collision, and it's not there. To do that, okay, and make sure now is the time that you want to make sure all your finishing touches are done on this. Just remember that there will be, actually, you might be able to do that now. Yeah, so you can do that now. So you can do subdivide. We're going to put a subdivision of 2 on there. That looks pretty good. So hit apply to the screw. Oh, and as you can see, you cannot apply constructive modifiers on a curve. So now we have to hit Alt C. Alt C is convert to, and we want to convert to a mesh from a curve, and it added those modifiers in the process. So that's perfect for what we want. If you went to tab mode, you have a beautiful topologized bowl, if that's the real word for that. So let's go ahead and get into particle systems. Hit add mesh plane. Oop. And we want to move that up on the Z axis. And this one we want to keep kind of low. This is more going to be like our base cereal. It's going to be more sitting in the bowl already. Let's go ahead and model our Cheerios. So if you hit Shift A, wait, I forgot to tell you. If you go down here, there's 20 different layers. That's the word I'm looking for. But we're just gonna go to the second layer for now, and hit. So you just click on it and hit Shift A, add mesh torus, and if you go over to the left-hand corner, the bottom one, you can see there's some options down here. Make sure that you don't do anything to your torus after you create it, and if you did, just delete it and recreate a new one, and this will pop back up. We want to change some of these settings. It looks like the major radius, I'm going to try 0.5. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And the minor radius, I'm going to 0.3. Actually, maybe 0.35. Oh. Yeah, you can do whatever you want, but I'm going to do it like that. I'm going to decrease some segments in it, because we're going to add a subdivide, so it's not going to matter too much. So I'm going to go through these settings so that you can get it if you want, just like mine. Major segments of 10, minor segments of 8, torus dimensions, major, minor, major radius of 0.5, minor radius of 0.35. The major radius more just affects like if you took a line right here, how big that would be. Undo that. Oh shoot. So I'm gonna have to recreate that because I undid it. So that was pretty good. And I think I had that 0.5. And the minor radius is more the radius between this line and that. So like the diameter of this, pretty much. I don't know if I explained that very well. Hopefully I did. So I'm going to put that at 0.35 again. I think we got a pretty basic Cheerio going on. Remember, this is not a Cheerio tutorial. This is pretty much a particle tutorial is what I'm focusing on. I'm going to hit smooth, and it really looks ugly, but that's okay. We're going to hit subdivision surface in the modifiers tab, and we're going to crank it up to 2. That gives us quite a bit of subdivisions. Then we're going to create a deform modifier, and it's going to be uh, displacement, and it looks like almost like a donut hole, but it's not what we're shooting for. So if we go ahead and over in the modifier tab, we can hit texture, new, and we've got a very jagged Cheerio because that's what it's going to be. So let's go ahead and go in the options for the texture, and let's change from clouds to noise, and that makes it even worse. So if we come into the colors and we click ramp, we can change some things on this. I think if I remember right, I flipped these and I created more of an indent into the Cheerio. But let's go back into the modifiers tab. So come back up here and decrease the strength of that to probably 0.1, maybe 0.2, maybe 0.15. So a happy medium in between those. And you can decrease this or increase it a little bit, and that will almost decrease the size of your Cheerio. And then we're not quite done with this, but to see what we're going to be looking at final, we're going to hit another subdivision surface and crank that up to a subdivision of 2. And it's almost like we've got some craters going on into our Cheerio. So that doesn't look too bad. If you want to change some settings in yours, you can do that with your ramp. I think if you darken this, you'll get more jagged. If you bring the lightness over to the right, you'll get more, you won't get as many. So I actually have that about half on the white and the black's clear to the right side. So, and it doesn't look half bad. I might bring the black a little bit more over. There we go, somewhere right there. Then I'm going to go into the materials tab and click, first, we're in Blender render. I like to do cycles because that's what Blender is actually moving to. So I'm going to click cycles, hit new, and I'm going to open up the node editor because this is going to get a little bit, we're going to change a little bit on the material. We want this to look halfway decent. So in just 1 second, I'm going to make sure that I get this right so it looks somewhat similar to what I had on my final render. So let's go ahead and change this diffuse to a Cheerio color, the main basic color of a Cheerio. Might go a little bit darker, more vibrant, somewhere right there. You can't really see it over here. I'm going to change mine to a render. Oh, first, I'm going to change this to the GPU. Go back to the materials. I'm going to change this to a rendered view so that I can kind of see what it looks like in real time a little bit. This really isn't what it's going to look like because there's no lighting and stuff factored into it yet. But if it were, this is what it kind of looked like a little bit. And I'm going to add another thing. So I'm going to hit add shader and go to just an add shader right there. I'm going to connect those. If you put them in between the two lines, it automatically input it between them. Then I'm going to hit add. I'm going to create another diffuse because we want to add another color to it. And then because we have a noise texture that we've already made, we're going to create a texture, and it's going to be a noise texture. But our problem is it creates color. So, and if you can see a little bit where the craters are all at, that's where different colors are stronger. So, I'm going to create Shift A. I'm going to create an RGB to black white, and that's in the converter. And what that'll do, it'll create it black and white, and that'll, because we added it and not mixed it, it more or less gave it more color and not mixture, which is I used to always use mix, and I've now found I like the add shader because it doesn't subtract from this color, it adds to it. So I'm gonna also input brightness contrast, and that's in the color. So you can go ahead and hit brightness contrast and input it in between the RGB to black and white and the diffuse BSDF. And if you play with this, you can get really bright and really dark results. I found that 0.4 brightness and a contrast of 3.4. It looks really ugly right now, but that's okay because when we actually render it with lighting, as you can see kind of right here, it looks halfway like a Cheerio. And you can see this is the very similar results as what I had before, and then in the lighting, I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger so you see it. It turns out to be somewhat like this. So enough focusing on texturing. Oh, one other thing. Because we want more of this color to show through, I'm also going to add another shader, and it's going to be another add shader. And the reason why is I'm going to move this down so it's a little more organized. So I'm going to add more of that same color, and it brightens it. So now we have double the Cheerio color with depth, which is pretty much this noise color texture. So enough with the texturing of this basic Cheerio. Let's go back to the solid and go to level 1 or layer 1. Go to your plane and hit the particle tab and hit new. I think if I remember right, I didn't have too many. I don't think I had too many particles coming out from here. But anyway, we only went to frame 50, if I remember right, on this one. Actually, I'm going to make sure. So let's go down to the render, and this is where the magic really happens. So I'm going to go into go to the render tab, hit object, duplicate object, and we want the torus, which is let's go to layer 2. Torus is our Cheerio. We could name that if you wanted to, and I'll actually show you. So right click on your torus, and it shows up highlighted up here. Double click on it and name it Cheerio. I have my caps lock on, so it's in capitals. Now when you go into frame 1 or layer 1, I think it updates right there too. So you don't have to go back in there and plug it all back in there. It works seamlessly, which is great. So our next thing is we're going to there we go. We're going to add some rotation to it, and we're going to want it to be dynamic. If we didn't, see if you undo rotation and you hit Alt A, they're all flat, and that is very unrealistic. But if you hit rotation and dynamic, okay, now that still looks very unrealistic, but that's okay because we're going to take off the normal. We're going to leave it to 0. Emitter geometry under velocity, it wants to be 0. The higher you set this, the more it'll shoot up. That's kind of what velocity means. And this is rotation. We want that to be up a little bit because that'll add some more dynamic rotation. You could add a little bit of this, but it doesn't really need to be. You could add a little bit of this. This is pretty much the same thing. This is letting the object, so this plane, which won't give hardly anything. Actually, it won't give anything. It's not moving. And this would be how the speed. So it adds randomness to this normal. But it also adds randomness to this rotation. So we are going to increase that. So if you hit it, as you can see, they're all random now, which is what we want. But we don't want them too random because it starts shooting everywhere. Because it did randomize our normal a little bit, and we have a 0. It didn't make very much sense, but that's okay. We're going to set it to 0.4, see what we can get from there. Oh yeah, perfect. And they're all falling. So now I did have them set at 1000. That's because I did want enough that it would look more splash-like. And I did set the end value to 50, but I left it at start at 1. The lifetime I set to 500, and that's because I also set this end to 500. And that's because we're going to have to make it splash and wait for a perfect moment. And I allowed 500 frames for that perfect moment to get the picture like this that just looked good. So I'm also going to hit random right here, and that'll randomize where the particles or the Cheerios are going to be emitted from this plane. And I don't need this open. We don't work with cache because if you have a slower computer, you can hit bake all dynamics, and it will actually bake it, and you won't have to wait for it to. Every time you hit Alt A, it won't recalculate it. But you want to bake that at the very end, because if not, you'll have to hit free all bakes to change any settings. So it's kind of a win-lose situation. So we can come down here. Let's see. Oh, yeah, physics. That's a big part of this one. We want to change that to fluid. If you don't have this to fluid, you won't get the splash effect. Because of that, the fluid is like a really nice feature that they've added kind of recently. Wasn't in just a lot this one. It's been a couple releases, so most of these you can leave. I don't think I actually changed any of them. Let me make sure on that. Yeah, I didn't change anything. So we're good there. Some of these, like Brownian, it's random motion, drag. If it's in the air, it'll kind of slow down. This is what you'd use for like fireworks and stuff. It works really good, and dampening, both for fireworks, because they kind of do the same thing a little bit. So I'm going to scroll down. We've got the object, but right here, if we change the size, I want the size, for me, 0.15 worked pretty good in the last render, and that makes them fairly big, which is, Cheerios aren't way small in a bowl of cereal, so that'll work pretty good. And hit Alt A and see what kind of stuff we can get going on. Oh, one other thing is they're falling right through the bowl. So I'm going to hit escape to end the simulation. If your computer is running slow, remember you can bake this. I think we're pretty well done with this. I'm sorry if we're not. I may come back and change it. If possible, don't bake it. So just a warning, you will have to free all bakes if we need to. But if you right click on your bowl and you go into your physics, I'm going to hit collision. Most of this is it's very realistic, so I don't have to change anything on there. But if you hit Alt A, you can see it kind of gives a splash effect. I'm going to make everything just a hint smaller so that the Cheerios seem larger. You could just make the Cheerios larger either way, but if I make it a little bit smaller, it might be a little bit easier to work with later on. Okay, perfect. I might want to bowl a little bit larger than that. You'll have to make sure, you want to keep all the Cheerios you can inside there, and it will look like it's going to fill them up, and you want it to as much as possible. If you might lose one or here or there, that's okay. You just want your bowl to be fairly full. And oh yeah, I think we might be okay. And at about frame 100, they should start slowing down and evening out. Yes, that's what we want. We don't want to. I don't want to change anything else because it's starting to grow, and that is really weird. Anyway, so at about frame 100, Maybe we'll go at even 80 because we don't want the growth to be noticeable. So I'm going to hit escape to end that. I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything. I think we're good. So let's go ahead and just duplicate this and move it on the Z axis. But we're going to come in here, go back into the particle settings, and hit this 2. This is very important because if not, you will change this as well because they're linked together because we duplicated them. If we hit this, they're now separate. If we change, I think all we need to change is the start and the end. So I'm going to just change the start to, I'm going to try 80. And try this 130. I think our end frame might be a little bit high, but we'll give it a try. So it'll start off emitting these, and then it will stop, and then these will flow in there and splash. And we just need to wait for my computer to finish taking this off. We're down to a very slow frame per second. But we can just give it a second because it will take care of it. So before we just sit here and wait for this to render, I'm going to speed this up by going to probably, instead of a start of 50, I want 80, not 50. End of 110. And I just noticed this because I'm going to put a plane here that will interact with these. Because I think what we want to do is if they're interacting with this plane, it will look more, I think it'll look more realistic. So, and that's what we're more shooting for. It's a realistic particle simulation. So let's go. Right click on your plane, go to physics and collision, and that's pretty much all we have to do. You could probably turn up particle dampening or particle friction. That will slow down, that'll stop them. I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to turn up particle friction to 0.6. 0.6. You can do the same thing with this. I'm actually going to do that because it sounds like a good thing to do. I think we're pretty good on that now. So let's go ahead and re-simulate these particles. Whoa. Something happened there. So if you need to almost clear your cache of particles, if you just run through your timeline, it does a fairly good job of trying to clear your cache. And then run all the way back. And you might have to do this every once in a while if you don't bake your particles like I am. I feel like baking your particles takes valuable time. So we just learned something. I didn't clear my cache before that, so I'm now gonna enlarge my bowl and do that again. So this is gonna just create almost like that milk fill underneath it. And because these are fluid, it will look fluid like milk. Okay, now here comes our splash. Oh, and it's just spewing out of this. So, I'm going to actually just increase the size of that. If we hit the 7, we don't want it to be larger than our bowl, but if we create it to be similar to the size of our bowl, it'll work good. So if we hit Shift A, I'm going to rotate down here so I can see what it looks like. it'll look like it's going to spew over, and that's okay because it'll settle down a little bit. We'll have a full bowl, and then we'll have, this is just almost our splash effect. And you could get pictures, like render any part of this if you would like to. But I like the splash effect. It looks pretty good. So I'm just going to wait for that. I'm debating about, it's not really giving our splash effect yet. Let's make I'm going to make my bowl a little bit larger. And one other thing that could be creating not enough splash is we could raise, I'm going to hit and simulation. I'm going to raise this quite a bit higher and make the bowl just slightly larger. Raise this a little bit higher. This is one reason why it's a little bit harder to play with particles because, especially in a tutorial, it's just so much different, and I hope this is working out for you. There's just really no way to tell that, as particles are random in themselves. If I told you every number, they'd probably still be different. Because the size of the bowl would be different, and the size of the plane would be different. I don't know, and there's probably other things. So this is going to fill up our bowl. It's very slow right now. So, sorry about the slow speed. So this is now created this base fluid because our particles are fluid. And our splash fluid should be coming around here sometime soon. I think we have it set. Let's find out what we have it set for. Wow, it's really inching along, isn't it? I have it set for to start at 80, so it's trying to go a little bit faster now. We got about 2.5 frames per second, and that's going to slow down again. For this, it's probably because I got something else rendering right now, but that's okay. It should be okay. So we have our fluid, and this should create a very good splash effect. If you hit 0 on your keypad, it'll take you to your camera, and this is not a very good view for your camera, but we're going to wait for it to splash a little bit. If you right click on your camera, you should be able to move around. But, okay, we're starting to get some splash effects. So come down here, and right as all those fluids come all the way down, right now, I'm going to hit pause. And I paused it about frame 141. We got the splash effect. We have the fluid all interacting. This is going to be a good one. So, I actually see one right here for me that looks like a pretty good one to focus on. Oh, just so you know, sometimes if you go underneath if you don't make your bowl very thick, sometimes you'll get some that'll show through your bowl. That's okay. Just, you can either move your camera to a different spot or make your bowl thicker. Then your Cheerios don't fall through your bowl. Either way. I'm going to go back into my camera though. I'm going to make sure that I have my full bowl. Well, I don't necessarily even have the full bowl. I'm going to zoom in. I don't know if you've ever heard of the rule of thirds, but it looks nicer if you can keep this and if you cut this into thirds, so you have a spot here, a spot here, and a spot here. The line that divides them is a good spot to keep something right here, and it also works this way. So if you can put something in this point, or this point, you'll have good looking renders and good looking images. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, actually more. The closer you get, I think you'll get a little bit cooler effect. Just because I like the closest of a bowl, so it's kind of harder to tell what it is necessarily because we aren't really focusing on that. And then if we hit Shift A, we're going to create a room to put this all in. It creates more of an atmosphere is what we're looking for. If you hit Z in this instance, it will. Actually don't hit it because I'm going to tell you what it does. It'll actually run slower because we have so many vertices that would have to render for it. So I prefer not to go into wireframe like this. It's very inching along. It's not very fast, and it's actually faster in solid mode. Very unusual. So, oh boy, should not have gone into wireframe mode to show you that. I just wanted to warn you about that. But if you go into the solid mode now, we can move this room up. You're just gonna have to guess a little bit. We have our camera right here. So we're gonna snap it to the axis. I like snapping it to the axis. I can tell exactly what's going on. I'm gonna get it to fit just perfectly. I'm gonna try going to frame. Oh yeah, that'll look good. Make sure that you can't notice. Oh, look right there. Perfect example. Looks like that cheerio's being cut into the wall. Oh, maybe it's not. It's just in a weird rotation. You want to make sure that if you can see any that look like it's being cut into the wall, either make your wall larger or something. So, you can either move your wall or change the size of it. Next, we are going to change some materials on the wall and this bowl, and then fill the view, and we're done. So, for the bowl, I think we set orange texture to it, or material, and it's just a glossy. So, if you're going into render view, it's gonna be a little bit more take longer to render and stuff, but we're not gonna be doing that too much right now. So if we hit glossy, and then I'm gonna change it to a slight red. I'm not gonna put it too dark because I just don't. If you change it to dark, it looks too bright, and then it gives very unrealistic looks. Because nobody makes plates that are pure red, and it's very hard to get. In real life, you hardly ever see pure colors, so you want to stay away from pure colors. And if you change this, so click on your wall now or your room, and hit new. Also, I think I also changed that to a glossy, so I want to change that to a glossy and put a blue tint, and I just want a very light blue. Maybe not a little bit, and then bright all the way. There we go. So you can put this whatever color you would like, but I changed it to those, and I like the glossy because it does a lot of the realistic stuff for you. Glossy turns fake stuff into real, pretty much. I mean, it's very unprofessionally said, and don't quote that, please. But it does make stuff look good, or it helps. It's not the only aspect. And I'm also going to change the roughness to 0.1 because nothing in the real world is perfect. And I think I'm going to change this to 0.1 also. Yeah, okay. If you go ahead, you can render this. Oh, and I know a problem. We don't have any lights in our room. So, for the lighting, we need to make sure that I think in the render that I did, I just had this inside there. A lot of times I use area or spot, and I love them, but this one I more wanted a room look because when you're eating cereal, it looks more like a room, or like you usually eat it with a single light above you. That's just, at least for my experience. You may have chandeliers to give more of a area. You could try an area, but it gives a pretty good render. Usually points don't, but this time they do. And then you also want to go into either the side view or the front view and lower that into your cube. You shouldn't be able to see it from the outside. Hit the 0, then hit F12, and ooh, that is very, very bright. Whoa. And those colors are very clashing. I can tell that. The one reason why I used blue and red is because I had yellow. Those are primary colors, and they look good together. One reason this doesn't look good is because the sampling is set to only be like 10, and so it's very noisy. I don't know. It's got a lot of noise in it. If you set this a little bit higher, your blue and red should look a little bit less fake. But these would too. But I'm actually set this a little bit higher. So if you go to sampling and hit render, I'm going to change this to probably at least 50. I'm also going to change the, not volume sampling, performance. I'm going to change the tiles to 512 by 512. It might render a little bit faster. So yeah, it just increases this tile size. That's all it does. Oh boy, it's not really creating much more. So this might be what we want to do. So I'm going to escape before it's done. And I'm going to hit 1. If we create our room to be, I'm going to go with a 7. If we create our room to be a little bit larger, but put the corner, so you put the corner of the room close to the edge of your bowl. That's right here for me, or it should be somewhere right there. If we put the edge there, and we can now put the light a little bit further away, and this could be a little bit trickier, but we're not going to select it from here. We're going to hit lamp right here, and that'll show us where it's at. We're going to bring it clear over here. We're going to hit the 3 and bring it clear over here, and if we hit the 7, we're going to bring it all the way over here, and that will bring the light furthest away from the cereal as possible. You could probably lower the amount of light coming from it, but the problem with it is if you lower it and you have it closer, it's going to look more and more like a flashlight shining on your bowl of cereal, which is not really what we want. We want more of something that'll give a lot of light, and because this is practically all mirrors around it, it'll reflect the light all the way over here very seamlessly and look way realistic. Or not way, but it'll look more realistic than if you were to have the light positioned right on one of these. So now if we hit F12, we get a very darker result, and resulting, it looks decent. It looks a lot better, at least. We're gonna have to probably change. So we made this a little bit too large, it looks like. I'm gonna put the light right here, and then we'll make this a little bit smaller. You remember, you're gonna just have to play with these settings. I'm gonna get the lamp again, make sure that might come in right there. So actually, I might try coming in right here. Now I'm gonna try rendering it. Okay, that's not a half bad render, or it's not going to turn out to be half bad. So, just by playing around, we got a semi-decent result. It's not near as good as like the one that we did earlier, the one that I did earlier, that one actually doesn't look half bad. But we also have other factors to factor in now. We now have to do the focusing of the camera. We're going to get the depth of field to work now. Oh, that was not a good idea right there. We are going to want to move something. Oh boy. It looks too much right there. So I'm going to escape and the render early because I don't need to finish it. Oh, it's done now anyway, but if we come, so there must, the camera must be right here. We're going to want to move that away from the camera. Try that. Oh, now we have a dark render. I'm going to hit escape again. Oh boy, see what physics does. All these, I don't know if it's necessarily physics this time, but we've got a lot of different factors to factor in here. I'm going to hit 3. I'm going to raise this. Maybe that'll help. Raise the light. Raise this cube. Make it a little bit taller. And raise it again. Because I want to fit the bowl, the camera, and the light in there. That's your most basic and most needed things that you could need. Let's try that again. So we're going to have to wait for it to render a little bit. Hopefully this doesn't look blown out as much as it did before. If you want to see how far it's sampling, up here in the top, you can see like 31 out of 50. Once it's hit 50, it'll go to the next one, and it'll probably go right here next. I think I have it set to left or right or something, or maybe a center. Ow, it looks a little bit blown out still, dang it. Oh. You know what? Okay, so we're going to do something I did a little bit different. I'm going to hit use nodes here, and I'm going to decrease the strength to like 50, and duplicate it, just over here somewhere, and change that one to 25, and I'm also going to duplicate another one over here. So we have the same amount of strength, but it's more divided up. And we might get a more even look to our render. I'm going to do this real quick, because we only need to see that, practically that one. I'm going to change the render to 20 samples. We just got to hurry this a little bit. I don't want to be here holding up your time forever. I'm sorry this isn't working out right. A lot of times, on my last one I also cut this in a little bit closer, and it looked a little bit better. That doesn't look half bad. You know what we could do, too? So I'm going to hit escape again. If you go to your first lamp, up here in there, up here, we could decrease. We want to go to light settings. We could decrease the strength of this one to like 25, and go to your lamp, another lamp, and change the light direction. Change this into 50, or even, let's go 75 on this one. We'll create the light coming from this side. Oh yeah, that doesn't look half bad. So, anyway, for me, this isn't working out very well. I'm hoping it's working out better for you. If you have any of these things, like I said, I've worked out, you just have to play with these things. My render for this tutorial isn't going to be very good. I'm just going to say that now. But just play around with these settings, because these settings are what makes it look good. You're going to have to play with them until they get it right. I'm sorry that it didn't really work out to show you that. For depth of field, we're going to hurry and go along. We're going to hit 0 to go to your camera. And then we're going to hit limits. And then change. I'm going to see what I've got this to. Because, one thing that would actually probably help a lot of things along is if you go to the cube right here, this is your room, if you hit the eyeball, you can come outside and you can see without the cube. So that kind of would have helped a little bit a while ago. So the limits. I right click on my camera. As soon as I click limits, it put that line there. That's what we want. I'm going to put the size. This is your aperture size. This is pretty much how much blur is going to be put in there. The lower the number, the less the blur. So I didn't want it to be too blurry. So we're going to try 0.005. But if you change this distance, you'll see this yellow move. And that's where it's going to focus. It's easy as that. I want to focus on this Cheerio. So now if we hit F12, you can watch as everything else is blurred. And it's very ugly blurred. It had only 20 samples. Because this is a low lighting situation, you're going to want to crank up these samples in your render. If you were actually wanting to go for a good render, you'd probably want at least 500 in this specific thing. If you want to go for a good render, I think I went for 500 in my render that I did, and I also went for a high resolution at 100%, just because I could not live with the results that I was getting. They were hideous, and a lot of times if you get higher samples, these results will turn out better too. So even if this doesn't turn out good, like you get to the highlights are way too bright, yeah, turn out these samples and hope for the best. Like it'll take a lot of time. Sorry, but it happens. As you can see, this is more in focus. I hope you can see it from my computer, but this is more in focus, and this is all blurred out. And the higher the samples, the clearer this will be, and the blurry, not the blur. That was horrible definition. The blur of this will look smoother, and this will just look really sharp. So crank these samples up if you want a good render, and imagine this is what we got, because this is a very satisfiable result. And I hope to see you next time. I hope this is working out well for you. Keep tweaking those. You can tweak those all day long, and I'm really sorry because this is physics and the lighting, and it's just really hard to get it perfect and really hard to make a tutorial on. And I hope you can understand all that stuff. Please join us next time in our next tutorial, and yeah, we'll see you later.